Hey guys, it's RodimusPrimal. I am back with another video, and today we have some sad news to report with two Transformers voice actors who had recently passed. We also have news that Hasbro themselves are not doing very well, as they're reportedly going to be laying off a large number of employees next year, in addition to closing down one of their offices. And on top of that, we do get to look at some positive Transformers news, since Transformers comic books are going to be doing some more reprintings, and we get a better look at that Titan class Tidal Wave. I've got a lot to talk about, so sit back, relax, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and let's transform and roll out. Consider supporting the channel on Patreon, becoming a channel member, or purchase some merch on my spring store today. In addition, get 15% off your order from toyhacks.com with the code PrimalXmas23 throughout the month of December. So the first news that I want to address today is the fact that Peter Spellos had passed away last month, and I did report on the fact that he was ill. And, they were doing a GoFundMe, trying to get enough funds to be able to help him. And unfortunately, he lost the battle to cancer. He was 69 years old. Unfortunately, I know that I was on a live stream and I talked about it and I, mentioned him and, rest in peace there. But I'm not sure that if I did so on my own channel here. So I'm reporting it here now that unfortunately that he had passed away. And so I have my deepest condolences to his family and friends. In addition, we also have learned that Pauline Newstone, who was the original voice for Beast Wars Air Razor, passed away as well. Now, this one is one where I may have been lax on unfortunately with Peter Spellos. With Pauline Newstone, unfortunately, we didn't learn about this until now. She apparently passed away back in May, and none of her family had reported it. It wasn't get out there at all, and we learned about it only because Gary Chalk was in attendance at an award ceremony, and they did an in memoriam to her, and so it's like, wow, it's just really sad to hear about this. That we lost not only one but two Transformers voice actors. And, I say this much: if you ever get an opportunity to get yourself out to a Transformers convention, make sure you make it a point to go see your favorite voice actors. They would be more than willing to say hi. I've never had a bad experience in going to meet any of the voice actors at any of these conventions. So, again, my deepest condolences to both of their family and friends. But we do have some interesting news, is that Hasbro is going to be doing a collaboration with McFarland Toys. McFarland has been producing these page punchers, and they're going to be doing Transformers and G.I. Joe. Apparently, they're also going to be doing Power Rangers and Dungeons and Dragons as well. We have no images yet of the toys. Now, I'm guessing this is designed to help Hasbro inject a little bit more money into their pockets because of the news that I'm going to talk about, a little bit later on. But I'm curious as to what kind of figures they're going to see. Are we going to see like small 2-inch Optimus Primes, and Megatrons and what have you, that just kind of go with a comic book? Or are we going to see some human characters in there? And I know they're going to be doing G.I. Joe characters, so it wouldn't be a bad thing if we saw Spike and Sparkplug, maybe Sorry, maybe Miko, and I'm just, you can go think of all of the different possibilities, that McFarlane can do, and maybe they'd be in scale with, Legacy and all the other toy lines that are out there. That would be really cool, but we'll see what they do. And this is one of those things where we'll eventually see the images, but I'm just reporting on it now since there is a press release. And as I said before, the, Skybound Comics are... everybody's looking out to reading them, and they're going to be reprinting issues 1 through 3 because they're just blowing out of all the comic book sales. What have you for them. But they're also going to be reprinting Void Rivals #1 for a 6th printing. That is insane. What that tells you is that so many people are out to get the comic books because they've been starved for good comic book content. And this is pretty decent. You know, the story's been fun along so far. I know it's not, you know, some people, I've enjoyed the art myself. I know it's not everybody has. The stories themselves are kind of gritty, so they're definitely not for kids. But man, comic book readers are getting really good Transformers action out of Skybound's offerings. So I definitely recommend picking it up if you can. Get to your local comic book stores, get them to put these comics on your pull lists, and, you know, certainly definitely read it. And I know that they're going to be doing a trade paperback, you know, down the road, so you can stay tuned for that, and maybe we'll get some more news about when that's coming out. I know it's coming out in May, to my understanding, for issues 1 through 6. So if you haven't already collected them, you can get them all in a trade paperback. But if you want the individual floppies, it is worth it if you want to, you know, read along with where the story is going. The other thing we've got to take a look at today is the behind the scenes for Tidal Wave. We've been waiting for, you know, official images to get released of this. This is directly from Sam Smith on the Hasbro's Transformers team. And he talked about the figure itself and what they're doing with it. And he says, you know, with the daunting chant of an impending doom with Tidal Wave, Tidal Wave, Tidal Wave, having been officially announced at Cybertron's Fest in Singapore, let's get into the details of Titan Tidal Wave. With the launch of Legacy United, we knew that there was no greater time to revisit this character at the Titan scale. This guy was a blast to work on. We had so many priorities. We needed to define out the gate. As a Titan, Tidal Wave needed to deliver a large-scale, super-articulated robot. As a vehicle, he needed to deliver a large flying aquatic warcraft, which needed to be assembled out of 3 smaller vehicle form factors, the Dark Fleet. Tidal Wave needed to combine with Armada Megatron to create Burning Megatron, and we felt he needed to have an alt mode that was achievable without having to separate the vehicles in assembly. And I'd like to say we were able to achieve 4 out of the 5, but in the end, we did them all. And so basically what they did is they made a full-size Titan-class figure, which I talked about in my last video. He does transform into his full dark, warship mode. But then he has a 4th base mode. And then on top of it, he can separate into 3 different modes. So you get the vehicles themselves, and they also can combine with Armada Megatron, but they're not. This is not how they're doing it. He's not so. He's going to be huge. As I said before, he's going to have smaller vehicles in his back that can combine with Megatron, as you see here, and they're going to give him risers on his feet. So that's how they're doing it. And then we get a little bit of the scale of Tidal Wave. He's going to stand a little bit shorter than the Nemesis, about the same height as the Ark in robot mode, which I think is perfectly fine for him, for those who wanted him very large. And you're still going to be able to get that combiner out of him. And I think that is really cool. You know, I've said myself, like, I'm not really big into collecting the Armada characters, but at the same time, I'm very happy for Armada fans who are getting one of the characters that they've really desired to see in this scale for being such a large character. And I actually think it really works here, you know, looking at him standing next to Megatron, all things considered, because I was like, do I really need a Titan class one? Can't they just do it in Leader? You know, couldn't they do it in Commander? And it's like, no, they're going to do it in Titan. And he's going to, you know, parts of him are going to come off, and you'll still get a full robot mode that stands next to Armada Megatron and combines with him as well. So you could still have your Titan on display while having Burning Megatron on display as well. So I think that is very exciting news. However, Hasbro as a whole is a hurting. They're slated to lay off 1,100 jobs, and I couldn't help but I can't not cover this. You know, this is one of those things where it's like, can I just focus just on the Transformers, or do we focus on Hasbro as a whole here? And really, it has to be, you have to take a step back and ask whether or not this pertains to Transformers or whether or not this only pertains to parts of Hasbro. Well, I also think that Hasbro themselves as a whole, they're getting slashed by 1,000 cuts, the death by 1,000 cuts thing. So that's really what's happening here. And I'll just read the article because I want to at least give you the information and then I can comment on it. So it says, toy maker Hasbro said Monday it's cutting about 1,100 jobs or 20% of its workforce as malaise in the toy business extends through another holiday shopping season. The nearly century-old Rhode Island-based company behind Monopoly, Play-Doh, and My Little Pony toys disclosed the layoffs in a memo to employees published in a regulatory filing. The Wall Street Journal first reported the news. The company said that the reductions are on top of 800 job cuts that have been taken so far in 2023 as part of moves announced last year to save up to $300 million annually by 2025. As of year-end 2022, the company said it had 6,490 employees. Like many toy companies, Hasbro struggling with a slowdown in sales after a surge during the pandemic lockdowns when parents were splurging on toys to keep their children busy. Last holiday season, many toy companies had to slash prices to get rid of merchandise due to weak demand. And the challenges have continued. Toy sales in the U.S. were down 8% from January through August, based on Circana's most recent data. The market headwinds we anticipated have proven to be stronger and more persistent than planned, Hasbro CEO Chris Cox wrote in the memo. While we have made some important progress across our organization, the headwinds we saw through the first 9 months of the year have continued into holiday and are likely to persist into 2024. Cox said the toy maker will focus on fewer bigger brands, gaming, digital, and our rapidly growing direct-to-consumer and licensing business deals. Shares on Hasbro fell almost 6% in aftermarket trading on Monday. So, that being said, what does this say about Hasbro? Well, we have to take a look at it objectively here, because you're going to have people who are going to be on the political ends of the spectrum, all talking about their Hasbro should just start firing executives. And Hasbro should, not be going so far down the, political rabbit hole with certain things. And that both sides of the aisle can kind of be true and a little overblown into what's really happening here. Let's take this into consideration. During the pandemic, as it said in the article, we were spending money to keep our kids occupied. A lot of people were buying a lot more stuff. And so it looked like the economy was doing relatively well, but it's really like a lot of toys were selling because we needed to keep our kids busy since they were home. We couldn't go anywhere and they needed more stuff. Well, now they don't need as much stuff. So they produced more stuff last year, and didn't sell as much. And now this following year, it's like, okay, so you started to see the waves kind of shrink a little bit. But that is as far as the toy industry is concerned. But the economy itself also took a major dip starting in 2021 as inflation, increased. And when that happened, Hasbro was like, okay, we'll just increase prices, which is not really good for consumers, because when you look at it, you're like, how am I going to afford to buy all these freaking figures? Commander class figures like this new Ultra Magnus that I intend to do a review for is $100. It's $100 for that figure. Whereas, not even 5 years ago, that would have cost me $70. It's a huge increase in price, just for that figure alone. You look at Titan class figures that used to cost maybe $120 around that same time. I don't know how much. I'm trying to think. Omega Supreme was $120, $130. And now Titan class figures are $200. So when I talked about, Tidal Wave earlier, people are like, how can I afford that? I don't know if I can afford that. So it's going to price some consumers out of the market, and not as many people are going to buy as many toys. And that is true. But, with less people buying, the increase in prices is designed to offset it so they don't have to lay off as many employees. And I don't understand. People are like, well, they should fire the executives. And to a degree, I agree with a lot of people in saying, hey, there are some top executives that are there that probably need to go, and they're a little on the overpaid side, for what they do. But by cutting every executive is not going to cut the costs as a whole. When you understand how a business is run, kind of go, okay, where could we cut costs? The only real way that we can actually look at this objectively and try to figure out like where could Hasbro win in this is, well, it's kind of hard. Some people have sworn off. Now, the political side of the spectrum, you have things like Dungeons and Dragons. So Dungeons and Dragons as a property is hurting really bad because they're interjecting things into the original concept of Dungeons and Dragons and saying, well, the original Dungeons and Dragons was a problem, so we have to change this and change this and change this. And it's like, if you keep changing it, you eventually change the game, and the game's no longer the same. Less people are going to be interested in playing it, and the older folks who are hardcore still playing it are only playing on the old rule books. So they're not going to go buy the new stuff to go buy because you're not allowing them to invite new people into the brand of Dungeons and Dragons. The movie didn't do well, so that they lost a lot of money. That hurt Hasbro. That's one avenue. I'm trying to remember if it was Magic the Gathering or if it was Dungeons and Dragons. Please correct me if I'm wrong. They sent the Pinkertons, a thuggish organization, to someone's house to get something that they got early. Like, seriously, you sent the Pinkertons to someone's house? Bad move, Hasbro. That's a bad PR move. That looks bad on you. And the thing is that word got out about that. There were people who are like, I collect G.I. Joe. I don't buy Hasbro G.I. Joe anymore. I collect Transformers. I don't buy Hasbro Transformers anymore. And a lot of people did that. A lot of people just said with those things alone. Well, then Hasbro also has the license to produce Star Wars and Marvel figures. Now, Star Wars has been hurt since The Last Jedi. Let's just be real here. Since The Last Jedi, Star Wars is a hurt brand, almost pretty much at this point, a dead brand. Toys just sit on and clog the shelves. Now they clog Ollie's shelves. Marvel, since Endgame, not everybody has been interested. Some people have been trying to stick with the MCU, and some people are like, after Endgame, they were out. And, ever since then, like a lot of the movies and TV shows have been mediocre at best and terrible at most. Many of the shows have just not been as exciting or worth watching, and so people are not going to the store. People are not going to the movies to go watch their movie. They're not going to watch the TV show. They're canceling their Disney Plus. And then Disney, on top of it, entered the political arena when really they should not have. And in doing so, a lot of parents decided, we're not going to go to Disney World. We're not going to go here. And we're not going to buy Disney products. Like, okay, Disney owns Marvel. I won't buy Marvel. But then Marvel also shot themselves in the foot with the bad storytelling and the comics. But again, I'm not getting into the political avenue here, but I'm saying is what people did, and their reaction to the moves that Disney made. Hasbro is suffering because they're producing product that is licensed by Disney, so it hurts Hasbro. Because Hasbro is all about selling toys, right? Or at least they should be. A lot of reports are out there about certain things, and some people are like, you know what, I'm out. And so they're just not buying Hasbro products. But it's not just that. Again, I don't want to talk about this like it's all of these things. It's also the inflation. It's also the toy sales as a whole are down because people are like, I got to cut costs. Right now it's costing me more money to buy groceries. So I can either put food on the table so my kids could eat, or I could buy them a toy and they could play with it while they starve. I can keep the electricity on, or I can let them play with a toy in the dark. I think I'll keep the lights on, right? That's really where parents are are looking at it, because, and they're also looking at the adult, and then you have the adult collector who says, yeah, same thing for me. You know, me buying a lot more of these action figures is a little bit of a hobby, but for the adult collector, they buy the figure, and, you know, it's not like right now, I look at this Ultra Magnus and he's solid. He is worth $100, but he's only worth $100 because they put the effort into him. You know, if you take a look at some of the deluxe class figures, and they're waffled all over the place. And so the adult collector goes, now I have to spend another $20 on a upgrade kit and another $5 for toy hack, or $15 for toy hacks labels. Like, it adds up, right? And so what do? They'll get the toy hacks labels with Autobots and Decepticon symbols, and they'll place them on third-party toys. Because they figure, okay, well, if I'm already going to spend $50 for this figure, you know, or $20 for this figure, or $25 for this figure, I think I'll just maybe buy, instead of buying the upgrade kits, maybe I'll spend $50, maybe I'll spend $60, or maybe even $80 and get a 1-to-1 figure, and all I gotta do is place an Autobot symbol on it. It doesn't cost that much for the label. And so people are weighing their options when it comes down to it for the adult collector. And for the child collector, they're, you know, with the kids, they're like, do they have the connections to these characters? Do they have good stories out there to connect them? It's not like my kids that are with daddy watching G1 Transformers. It's, now we have people who are, whatever Transformers series they were into, that's what they're into, and they're not necessarily buying the figures. Or are they buying the figures? Well, according to Hasbro's numbers, they're not. But the thing is, Transformers, the brand, is in and of itself doing okay. It's the other brands around Hasbro that are hurting. Marvel, Star Wars, Dungeons and Dragons. G.I. Joe is actually going through a resurgence right now, and I think that one's doing pretty well. Power Rangers is actually helping save Hasbro from basically utter doom, but still, it's hurting them as a whole. And if they continue to cut costs too much, and if they continue to lay off employees too much, it'll actually hurt them in the long run. So I do agree with the sentiment that maybe some of the executives got to go. Personally speaking, I think they need a replacement CEO. They need a guy who has a vision for Hasbro as a toy maker to make better toys for the market that don't pander to politics. I don't care what side of the political aisle you're on. Hear my statement here. Doesn't pander to specific politics. Doesn't matter which side of the aisle. Just make good toys that people really want. And if you have an entertainment wing, make entertainment that parents would be okay with their kids watching. Just saying. If parents say no to a certain show, they don't let them watch that show, now they don't watch it. Now they're not excited to buy a toy based upon those characters. You can understand, like, it's not, not looking at it from the political side of the spectrums here. It's just a matter of looking at it from just what is Hasbro doing that could be done right and could be done better. And while I can be objectively saying that, hey, Hasbro is really messing up here, I can also look at it from the perspective of, yeah, but it's also a larger problem for the toy industry as a whole. And I hope the toy industry survives it, considering that what we're seeing with the world right now, just looking at the headlines right up above, AP there. I'm not getting into it, at least not on this channel. But I want to know what you guys think about this news. Are you worried about Hasbro right now? Do you think that maybe that there could be some things that could be done better from their end? And what do you think could be done? Again, keep the politics, curb the politics a little bit here. What do you think that could be done to better help the toy industry? And on top of that, give your thoughts also about Skybound and Tidal Wave and the voice actors as well. Leave all those comments down below. Be sure to thumbs up this video and subscribe. Check out my other videos as well. I have many more Transformers news, retrospectives, and more coming down the pipeline, so stay tuned for all that. And as always, guys, until next time, till all are one.